From a war hero working undercover in a Mexican circus to a presidential pet pig named after TV's most famous swine, Green Acres harbored secrets far stranger than Oliver Douglas's farming failures. Behind the wholesome facade of America's favorite fish-out-of-water sitcom lurked bizarre casting coincidences, wartime espionage, presidential obsessions, and one of Hollywood's most persistent urban legends about what really happened to Arnold at the wrap party. Fact 1. Eddie Albert was a war hero spy. Most people remember Eddie Albert as Oliver Wendell Douglas, the well-meaning but completely clueless New York lawyer who moved to a farm in Green Acres. What they don't know is that before he ever put on overalls and tried to milk a cow on television, Albert lived a life that was far more dangerous and heroic than any sitcom plot could ever be. During World War II, Albert served as a naval officer and became a genuine war hero at the Battle of Tarawa in 1943. While his official job was supposed to be examining abandoned military equipment on the battlefield to see if it was worth salvaging, Albert discovered something much more important when he reached the beach. Under heavy enemy fire, he found dozens of wounded Marines who had been left behind during the chaotic landing. These men were trapped and would have died without help. Albert didn't hesitate to act, even though it meant putting his own life at serious risk. He used a small boat that wasn't designed for rescue operations to ferry the wounded soldiers to safety, making multiple trips back and forth while Japanese forces continued shooting at him. By the time he was finished, Albert had saved 47 Marines from certain death. For his extraordinary bravery under fire, he was awarded the Bronze Star with a Combat 5, one of the military's highest honors for valor. But Albert's wartime service was even more unusual than most people realize. Before the Battle of Tarawa, he had worked undercover as a circus performer in Mexico, traveling with a group called the Escalante Brothers as both a clown and a trapeze artist. What looked like entertainment was actually a cover story for intelligence work, as Albert was secretly gathering information about Nazi and Japanese activities along Mexico's coastline for the United States government. His circus background from before the war made him the perfect person for this dangerous assignment. Fact 2. President Eisenhower named his pet pig Arnold. When Dwight D. Eisenhower finished his time as President of the United States in 1961, he settled into retirement at his farm in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where he discovered an unexpected new passion that would surprise anyone who knew him as a serious military leader and politician. The former Supreme Allied Commander and two-term president became completely obsessed with a silly television sitcom about a New York lawyer trying to become a farmer, and his devotion to Green Acres went far beyond just watching it every week. Eisenhower and his wife Mamie made Green Acres appointment television during the show's run from 1965 to 1971, never missing an episode, and discussing the characters as if they were real people they knew personally. The former president found the show so entertaining that he would often talk about Oliver Douglas's latest farming disasters and Lisa's glamorous antics with visitors to his home, treating the fictional residents of Hooterville like old friends he was catching up on. But Eisenhower's love for the show reached truly extraordinary levels when it came to the most famous character of all. Arnold the pig, who was treated like a human son by his owners Fred and Doris Ziffel on the show, captured the former president's imagination so completely that he decided to honor the character in the most unusual way possible. When Eisenhower's valet acquired a pet pig, the former leader of the free world insisted that it be named Arnold, directly after the television pig he had grown to love. Even more remarkable was how the Eisenhowers treated their real-life Arnold compared to their own family members. The pig was given free run of the presidential retirement home, allowed to lounge on the expensive slip-covered furniture in the living room and other formal areas of the house. Meanwhile, the Eisenhower grandchildren were strictly forbidden from sitting on those same pieces of furniture, creating the surreal situation where a farm animal had more household privileges than the former president's own grandkids. Fact 3. Arnold was paid more than most actors. While the human stars of Green Acres were earning typical television salaries for the 1960s, the real moneymaker on the show walked on four legs and communicated mainly through squeals and grunts. Arnold the pig wasn't just the breakout star of the series, he was also the highest-paid performer per day of work, earning a stunning $250 for each day of filming, which would be equivalent to nearly $2,000 in today's money. To put Arnold's impressive salary into perspective, most working actors in Hollywood during the mid-1960s were lucky to earn $50 to $100 per day on television productions, making the pig's daily rate more than double what many human performers could command. Arnold's compensation package was so professional that he even had his own union contract, complete with all the standard protections and benefits that were typically reserved for human actors, making him one of the few animals in entertainment history to be treated as a full union member. But Arnold's success didn't stop at his paycheck, because he was also the only cast member of Green Acres to actually win awards for his performances. While Eddie Albert and Eva Gabor were beloved by audiences and critics alike, neither of them took home any major awards during the show's 6-year run. Arnold, on the other hand, became a 3-time winner of the Patsy Award, which stood for Picture Animal Top Star of the Year and served as the equivalent of the Academy Awards for animal performers in movies and television. The Patsy Awards were presented annually by the American Humane Association to recognize outstanding animal actors, and Arnold's 3 consecutive wins made him one of the most decorated performers in the entire entertainment industry during the late 1960s. His award-winning performances included everything from playing piano and painting abstract art to attending school with a lunchbox in his mouth and watching television like a human family member, proving that his hefty daily salary was well-earned through genuine talent and professionalism. Fact 4. Multiple female pigs played Arnold. Television audiences who fell in love with Arnold the pig during Green Acres' 6-year run were actually watching at least 4 different animals perform the role, though the show's producers worked hard to make sure viewers never noticed the frequent cast changes happening right in front of their eyes. The challenge of keeping Arnold looking consistently young and small throughout the series required a carefully planned rotation of pig actors that would have impressed any Hollywood casting director. The reason for all these pig replacements came down to basic biology, because Chester white pigs like Arnold grow incredibly fast and can become enormous in a very short time. While the pigs started out as adorable piglets that could easily be handled by the human actors and fit comfortably in scenes, male pigs in particular could balloon up to 900 pounds or more by the time they reached full adult size. A pig that massive would have been impossible to work with on set and would have completely destroyed the illusion that Arnold was the same lovable character from episode to episode. To solve this problem, the show's animal trainer Frank Inn made the smart decision to use mostly female pigs after the first Arnold, because female pigs typically stay much smaller than males, even when they reach maturity. This meant that each female Arnold could work on the show for a longer period before growing too large for the role, reducing the number of times they needed to find and train a replacement pig. All of the pigs who played Arnold came from the same source, a farm located in Mooresville, Indiana, which gave them consistent breeding and similar appearances that helped maintain the character's continuity. Interestingly, this small Indiana town had another claim to fame that was completely unrelated to television, as it was also the birthplace of notorious bank robber John Dillinger, making Mooresville the unlikely connection between one of America's most beloved TV characters and one of its most famous criminals. Fact 5. The Arnold cannibalism rumor was a lie. For decades after Green Acres ended in 1971, one of the most disturbing and persistent rumors in television history followed the beloved show wherever it went, claiming that the cast and crew had gathered for a luau-themed wrap party where they actually barbecued and ate Arnold the pig as their final meal together. This shocking story spread far and wide among fans and became one of those dark Hollywood legends that people whispered about, wondering if the wholesome stars they loved could really have done something so heartless to their 4-legged co-star. The rumor was so widespread and detailed that it appeared in entertainment magazines and was repeated by television historians for years, with many people accepting it as a gruesome but true piece of show business history. Fans would approach the former cast members at conventions and public appearances, asking with genuine horror in their voices whether the terrible story was actually real, wanting to know how they could have possibly eaten the pig that had brought so much joy to millions of viewers. The truth behind this persistent urban legend finally came out years later, when Tom Lester, the actor who played farmhand Eb Dawson, admitted in interviews that he had completely made up the entire story from beginning to end. Lester revealed that he had grown incredibly tired of fans, constantly asking him the same question over and over again about what had happened to Arnold after the show was canceled, so he decided to give them an answer that would be so shocking and memorable that they would stop bothering him about it. According to Lester, the real wrap party was completely ordinary, featuring typical party food like finger sandwiches and appetizers, with no pig roasting of any kind taking place. He later acknowledged that his fictional story had taken on a life of its own and spread much further than he ever intended, becoming one of television's most famous fake scandals and proving just how quickly a made-up story can become accepted as historical fact when it sounds dramatic enough to be believable. Fact 6. Eva Gabor's costumes were Frankenstein creations. One of the most memorable aspects of Green Acres was watching Eva Gabor's character Lisa Douglas attempt to do farm work while wearing the most elaborate and expensive-looking gowns imaginable, but the reality behind those glamorous outfits was far more chaotic and creative than viewers could have ever guessed. The show's costume designer Nolan Miller faced an almost impossible challenge every week, trying to dress Gabor in authentic designer clothing, while working with a television budget that kept getting smaller as the series went on. Miller discovered a potential solution when he partnered with a discount designer store called Lohmann's, which specialized in buying up sample dresses from high-end fashion houses and selling them at reduced prices. The store agreed to send their best designer samples directly to the Green Acres set, giving Gabor access to genuine couture pieces that would have cost thousands of dollars if purchased at full retail price. The problem was that fashion samples are typically made in the smallest possible size to show off the design on runway models, which meant that almost every dress that arrived on set was a size 2. Since Gabor wore a size 8, there was no way she could fit into any of the beautiful designer samples without major alterations, so Miller developed an ingenious but labor-intensive solution that turned costume creation into something resembling surgical reconstruction. Each dress had to be carefully taken apart piece by piece, then reassembled with additional fabric to make it large enough for Gabor to wear, essentially creating entirely new garments from the original designer pieces. The most challenging part of this process involved ostrich feathers, which were extremely popular in high-end fashion during the 1960s and appeared on many of the sample dresses that arrived from Lohmann's. The show employed just one seamstress to handle all of this detailed work, and she spent countless hours carefully removing ostrich feathers from one dress and sewing them onto another, over and over again, as the same feathers were recycled from outfit to outfit throughout the entire 6-year run of the series. Fact 7. Mr. Haney was based on Elvis's manager. When Pat Buttram created the character of Mr. Haney, the smooth-talking con artist who was always trying to sell Oliver Douglas some ridiculous piece of junk at an outrageous price, he didn't have to look very far for inspiration, because he had recently met one of the most famous swindlers in the entertainment business. Just a year before Green Acres premiered, Buttram had worked on a movie called Roostabout, where he played the owner of a traveling carnival, and it was on that film set that he encountered a man whose personality would become the foundation for one of television's most memorable villains. The man who caught Buttram's attention was Colonel Tom Parker, who served as Elvis Presley's manager and was known throughout Hollywood as someone who could sell anything to anyone, often at prices that seemed completely unreasonable. Parker was famous for his ability to negotiate deals that heavily favored himself and Elvis, but he did it with such charm and confidence that people often didn't realize they were being taken advantage of until long after the contracts were signed. His smooth way of talking and his talent for making even the most questionable business deals sound like golden opportunities made a lasting impression on Buttram. Buttram later admitted that he used Parker as the direct inspiration for Mr. Haney's personality, borrowing the manager's gift for fast-talking salesmanship and his ability to convince people that they absolutely needed to buy something they had never wanted before. Just like Parker could convince record companies and concert promoters to agree to Elvis's increasingly demanding terms, Mr. Haney could persuade Oliver that he desperately needed a two-headed chicken or a truck that ran on cooking grease. The connection between Parker and Mr. Haney became even more obvious when you consider how both men operated, using their folksy charm and seemingly friendly demeanor to mask their true intentions as master manipulators who were always looking for their next big score. Buttram's performance captured Parker's essence so perfectly that Mr. Haney became the archetypal television con man. Fact 8. The show had no pilot episode. In the world of television production, almost every series that makes it to air starts with a pilot episode, which is essentially a test run that networks use to decide whether a show concept is worth investing in for a full season. These pilot episodes are crucial because they give network executives a chance to see how the characters work together, whether the premise is actually funny or dramatic enough to sustain viewer interest, and if the overall production quality meets their standards before they commit millions of dollars to producing an entire series. Green Acres broke this fundamental rule of television development in the most unusual way possible, skipping the pilot process entirely and going straight into full production without anyone at CBS ever seeing a single completed episode. This happened because producer Paul Henning had already proven himself to be incredibly successful with his previous rural comedy shows, The Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction, both of which had become massive hits for the network and were bringing in huge advertising revenues. CBS executives were so confident in Henning's ability to create popular television that they made him an offer that was almost unheard of in the industry at that time. Instead of asking him to develop and produce a pilot episode that they could evaluate, they simply told him they had a third-time slot available on their schedule and asked if he wanted to create another show to fill it. This level of trust from a major television network was extraordinary, especially considering that Green Acres would be Henning's third show running simultaneously on CBS. The network's faith in Henning turned out to be completely justified, as Green Acres became an immediate success when it premiered in 1965, proving that sometimes the traditional pilot process isn't necessary when you have a producer with a proven track record. The show jumped straight into its first official episode without any testing or fine-tuning, and audiences embraced Oliver and Lisa Douglas from the very beginning. Fact 9. All scenes were shot against one painted flat. Television production in the 1960s operated under much tighter budget constraints than modern shows, which meant that producers had to find creative ways to make their money stretch as far as possible while still creating a convincing world for their characters to inhabit. Green Acres took this cost-cutting approach to an extreme that becomes almost comical once you know what to look for, because the entire outdoor world of Hooterville was created using just one piece of painted scenery that appeared in virtually every single scene filmed outside the interior sets. This single painted flat, which was essentially a large piece of canvas with a scenic landscape painted on it, featured the same rolling hills and distant mountains that served as the backdrop for every outdoor location throughout the show's 6-year run. Whether Oliver was working in his fields, the characters were standing in the town square, or scenes took place at Sam Drucker's general store, viewers were always looking at exactly the same painted hills and mountains in the background, creating an unintentional uniformity that made Hooterville seem like the smallest and most geographically consistent place on Earth. The production team became so dependent on this single painted backdrop that they never bothered to create alternate scenery or even slightly different versions of the same landscape, which means that eagle-eyed viewers can spot the identical background elements appearing in scenes that are supposed to take place miles apart from each other. The same distinctive mountain peaks and hill formations show up whether the action is happening at the Douglas farm, outside the courthouse, or at any other outdoor location in the fictional town. This extreme budget-saving measure actually adds to the show's surreal charm when you notice it, because it reinforces the idea that Hooterville exists in its own strange little bubble where the normal rules of geography and reality don't necessarily apply, making the recycled scenery feel like part of the show's deliberately absurd approach to storytelling rather than just a production shortcut. Fact 10. The theme song composer also created the Addams Family theme. When television viewers in the 1960s heard the catchy opening music for Green Acres, they were listening to the work of composer Vic Mizzy, who had already proven his talent for creating memorable television theme songs that would stick in people's heads for decades to come. What many fans don't realize is that Mizzy was responsible for composing two of the most recognizable and beloved theme songs in television history, because he had also written the spooky and instantly memorable music for the Addams Family just 1 year earlier. Mizzy's ability to create completely different musical styles for vastly different shows demonstrated his remarkable versatility as a composer, moving seamlessly from the creepy harpsichord melody and finger snaps of the Addams Family to the upbeat country-style duet that introduced viewers to the world of Hooterville. Both theme songs became cultural touchstones that are still widely recognized and hummed by people who weren't even born when the shows originally aired, proving that Mizzy had a special gift for writing music that could capture the essence of a television series in just a few short notes. Green Acres broke new ground in television history by becoming the first sitcom ever to feature its main stars singing their own theme song instead of hiring professional session vocalists to perform the opening music. Eddie Albert and Eva Gabor, who played Oliver and Lisa Douglas, recorded the famous duet where they argued about the merits of farm life versus city living, setting up the show's central conflict right in the opening credits through their musical disagreement. This innovative approach of having the actors sing their own theme song was considered quite risky at the time, since Albert and Gaber were not professional singers and had never recorded music together before. However, their genuine chemistry as performers and their ability to embody their characters' personalities even while singing made the theme song feel authentic and charming, establishing a trend that other television shows would eventually follow in later decades. Fact 11. Eddie Albert and Eva Gabor are buried near each other. The chemistry between Eddie Albert and Eva Gabor that made their portrayal of Oliver and Lisa Douglas so believable on Green Acres wasn't just good acting, because the two stars developed a genuine and deep friendship during their years working together that lasted for the rest of their lives. Their connection went far beyond the typical professional relationship between co-stars, as they truly cared about each other as people and maintained their close bond long after the cameras stopped rolling and the show ended in 1971. Throughout the filming of Green Acres, Albert and Gabor were often seen touching each other casually during scenes, whether it was a hand on an arm or a gentle pat on the shoulder, and this natural physical affection between them translated into a warmth on screen that audiences could feel. Their friendship was so strong that they would spend time together away from the set, sharing meals and conversations about their lives, families, and dreams for the future, treating each other more like family members than just colleagues who happened to work on the same television show. When Eva Gabor died on July 4, 1995, Eddie Albert was reportedly devastated by the loss of his dear friend, falling into a deep depression that lasted for months as he struggled to cope with losing someone who had been such an important part of his life for so many years. Albert, who was already in his late 80s at the time, never fully recovered from the grief of losing Gaber, and those close to him said that her death marked the beginning of his own decline in both health and spirits. The bond between Albert and Gabor continues even in death, as they are buried only a few feet apart from each other in Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles, California. This final proximity serves as a lasting testament to their friendship, ensuring that the two stars who brought so much joy to millions of viewers as a fictional married couple will remain close companions for eternity. Fact 12. The final episodes were failed backdoor pilots. Green Acres came to an abrupt end in 1971 without any kind of proper series finale or farewell episode, leaving fans confused about why their favorite characters never got a chance to say goodbye or wrap up their storylines in a satisfying way. The reason for this jarring conclusion had nothing to do with the show's popularity, which was still strong at the time of cancellation, but rather because the producers were so confident that Green Acres would continue for many more seasons that they used the final episodes as launching pads for completely different television series. The last two episodes of Green Acres weren't actually designed to be endings at all, but were instead what the television industry calls backdoor pilots, which are special episodes that introduce new characters and settings within an existing show in hopes of spinning them off into their own separate series. These backdoor pilots are typically much less risky than creating entirely new shows from scratch, because they can test audience reaction to potential spin-offs while still delivering regular episodes of the popular parent series. The second-to-last episode of Green Acres was called Hawaiian Honeymoon and followed Oliver and Lisa Douglas as they traveled to Hawaii for their 5th wedding anniversary, but the real focus of the episode was on the hotel where they stayed and the people who ran it. The proposed spin-off was going to be called Pam and would have centered around the hotel owner and his daughter, creating a new series set in tropical Hawaii rather than rural Hooterville. The final episode of the series focused heavily on Oliver's former secretary from his New York law practice, a character named Carol Rush, who had moved to Los Angeles to work for a real estate company. This backdoor pilot was going to become a show called either Carol or the Blonde, featuring the adventures of Oliver's ex-secretary in her new California life. Unfortunately for Green Acres fans, neither of these proposed spin-offs was picked up by CBS, leaving the series without any real conclusion. Fact 13. Malaysia censored all pig scenes. When Green Acres was broadcast internationally during the 1960s and 70s, most countries around the world showed the episodes exactly as they had appeared on American television, complete with all the characters and storylines that made the show so popular with audiences everywhere. However, when the series made its way to Malaysia, viewers there experienced a very different version of the show that was missing one of its most beloved and important characters, creating a viewing experience that must have been extremely confusing for anyone trying to follow the plot. Malaysian television censors made the decision to completely remove every single scene that featured Arnold the pig from all episodes of Green Acres before broadcasting them to the public, resulting in shows that had significant gaps in their storylines and conversations that suddenly made no sense. This extensive editing was done out of respect for Malaysia's large Muslim population, since Islamic dietary laws consider pigs to be unclean animals that should not be consumed, and showing pigs in a positive or humanized way on television was considered potentially offensive to religious viewers. The censorship of Arnold created some truly bizarre viewing experiences for Malaysian audiences because so many of the show's episodes revolved around the pig's activities and his interactions with the other characters in Hooterville. Viewers would see Fred and Doris Ziffel talking to empty air, referring to their beloved son who was completely invisible on screen, and Oliver Douglas would appear to be arguing with nothing at all whenever he tried to explain that Arnold was just a regular farm animal rather than a member of the family. This heavy editing also meant that Malaysian viewers missed out on many of the show's funniest moments and running gags, since Arnold's human-like behavior and his ability to outsmart the adult characters was a central source of comedy throughout the series. The censored version of Green Acres must have seemed like a completely different show, focusing much more heavily on the human characters while leaving unexplained references to a mysterious family member who apparently lived with the Ziffels but never appeared on screen. Fact 14. The show inspired The Simple Life. More than 30 years after Green Acres ended its run on CBS, the show's basic premise found new life in an unexpected place when Fox television executives were brainstorming ideas for reality television programming in the early 2000s. The concept of wealthy, sophisticated people from the city struggling to adapt to rural life and failing spectacularly at basic farm tasks struck network programmers as the perfect foundation for a modern reality show that could capture the same kind of comedy that had made Green Acres so popular decades earlier. Fox executives have publicly credited Green Acres as the direct inspiration for The Simple Life, the reality series that premiered in 2003 and starred Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie as two privileged young women from wealthy families who were sent to live with ordinary families in small towns across America. The network saw the show as essentially a real-life version of what Oliver and Lisa Douglas experienced when they moved from their luxurious Manhattan penthouse to their rundown farm in Hooterville, complete with the same culture clash and fish-out-of-water comedy that had entertained television audiences in the 1960s. The parallels between the two shows were unmistakable, as both featured pampered city dwellers who had no practical skills or understanding of how rural life actually worked, leading to hilarious situations when they attempted to perform simple tasks that country people took for granted. Just as Lisa Douglas would try to cook breakfast while wearing an evening gown and jewelry, Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie would attempt farm chores while maintaining their glamorous appearances and refusing to give up their designer clothes and expensive accessories. The Simple Life became a massive hit for Fox and helped launch the entire genre of celebrity reality television, proving that the Green Acres formula of putting wealthy urbanites in rural settings was just as entertaining in the 21st century as it had been in the 1960s, even when the participants were real people instead of fictional characters. Fact 15. Most of the cast was over 40. Television sitcoms in the 1960s typically featured younger actors and actresses who could appeal to the broad audience demographics that advertisers wanted to reach, with most ensemble casts built around performers in their 20s and 30s who represented the energy and attractiveness that network executives believed would keep viewers tuned in week after week. Green Acres took a completely different approach when it came to casting, assembling a group of actors who were significantly older than the television industry standard and proving that audiences were perfectly happy to watch performers who brought experience and maturity to their roles instead of just youthful appeal. When Green Acres premiered in 1965, nearly every major cast member had already passed their 40th birthday, making them what the entertainment industry would have considered well past their prime for television stardom at that time. Eddie Albert, who played Oliver Douglas, was 59 years old when the show began, while Eva Gabor was 46 when she took on the role of Lisa Douglas, and supporting players like Pat Buttram, Frank Cady, Hank Patterson, and Eleanor Audley were all in their 40s, 50s, or even 60s when they joined the cast. The only exception to this pattern was Tom Lester, who played the enthusiastic farmhand Eb Dawson. and was just 27 years old when Green Acres started, making him the baby of the group by more than a decade, and the only cast member who fit the typical age profile for television performers of that era. Lester's youthful energy provided a nice contrast to the more seasoned actors around him, but his presence also highlighted just how unusual it was for a sitcom to rely so heavily on older performers as its main source of comedy and audience connection. This casting decision turned out to be brilliant, because the older actors brought a level of professional skill and comedic timing that came from decades of experience in theater, radio, and film, creating performances that were more polished and sophisticated than many younger performers could have delivered at that stage of their careers.